Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear fellows, my name is Muhammad Umar and I am student of MBA-ITM 20 from the Faculty of Management Sciences. The topic which I am going to present today is e-commerce law. First of all, I would like to discuss with you the outline of my presentation. First of all, I would like to discuss the definition of e-commerce. Then I will discuss the functional equivalency, then the element of contract, enforcement of contract, then the legal issue in the e-commerce, legislation, types of agreements, and then at the end of my presentation, I will discuss the conclusion of my presentation. Now, moving to my first slide, which is the definition of e-commerce. E-commerce can be defined as the process of buying, selling, or exchanging of products, services, and information via computer networks, including the internet. Now, the topic which I will discuss with you is the functional equivalency. This equivalency is between the contract traditional law and e-commerce law. There are three reasons of this equivalency. First is technology outpaces law, which means that technology has been improving rapidly and day by day, but law isn't. So there is a gap between both of them. And second reason is this, that it has enough common with traditional contract law, both involving buying, selling, payment, delivery, etc. So when we are differentiating the contract traditional law and e-commerce law, we can say that in e-commerce there is no use of paper and there is no use of human being. So on these two bases we can differentiate the e-commerce law from the traditional contract law. To my next slide, which is the element of contract. There are 6 elements of contract, which are offer and acceptance, consideration, statutes of fraud, performance, compliance, and breach. Now I will describe them step by step. Now moving to my next slide, which is the first element of the contract, and it is offer and acceptance. Offer can be defined as a manifestation of assent to enter into bargain made by offerer. Now offer can be many types, like offer to sell, offer to purchase, etc. Offer contains certain conditional statement which differentiated it from an advertisement. And as far as acceptance is concerned, according to the section 64 of restatement, which stated that acceptance given by telephone or other medium of two-way communication is governed by the principle applicable to each other only when parties are in presence. Now, as far as medium is concerned, whatever medium we use, it must be able to prompt so that reliable communication and or reliable transaction can be applicable. Now, the usage of EDI is preferred instead of email. The email causes delay, so it isn't preferred. Now, moving to next element of the contract, which is consideration. Any valid contract requires parties bargains for consideration. Suppose if I purchase a car and I paid the payment, so the delivery of that car would be consideration for me. It may consist of actual performance like delivery of goods or payment. In a transaction, when a promise is fulfilled without concerning about the performance, agreement will comply with the consideration required. Let's talk about the fourth element of the contract, which is statutes of fraud. A party who breaches the contract, so it may be taken to the court, but US court don't enforce agreement unless some memorandum in writing and signed by parties, means statutes of fraud present there. If I ask you a question that whether e-commerce permits the use of paper, you would definitely say no. As far as mode of communication is concerned, courts are really flexible in it. Signature requirement or a symbol could be included in the document. This symbol or signature could be defined as a digital signature. Digital signature allow recipient digitally signed message to determine the originator and to confirm that message has not been altered since it's signed. The fourth element of contract is performance. Performance can be defined as all the effort to complete bargain is called performance. In e-commerce, it includes electronic media in payment process or download of software, and access of information is an example of performance. Now, before describing the fifth element of contract, I would like to first describe the sixth element, which is breach. A party's failure to perform completely in accordance with the term of agreement, which constitutes a breach of contract. Now the fifth element of contract, which is compliance. One party substantially performed in good faith, it would be unfair to forfeit all his effort just because he has not fully complied with contract. So law isn't so harsh in this regard and consider all the effort done by the breach. Let's start the topic of enforcement of contract. Fundamental objective of law is to protect the contract, and in case of breaching of contract, so it may be enforced. Enforcement of contract has two topics to be discussed. First one is liability and damages, and second one is evidence. So I will discuss both of them step by step. Now the first topic of enforcement of contract, which is the liability and damages. In case of breaching the contract, court may order the breaching party to deliver goods to plaintiff. Now the question arises that what is plaintiff? Plaintiff is the injured party who suffered from the breached contract. When specified performance isn't feasible, court may declare monetary damage to the plaintiff. Problem for parties which can be occurred is that party may find themselves liable for the contract which technically originated by them, but programming or transmission error may result in difficulties among the parties. Now, the techniques to limit exposure to liability. Audit and control reviews, legal technical agreements, insurance, proper HRM could be the techniques that can limit the exposure to liability for the second topic of enforcement of contract is the evidence. Enforcement requires proofs that how it has breached and how much party has damaged. To file a case in the court, concerned documents must comply with standard include rule of authentication, hearsay rule, and the best evidence rule. One more important thing which I want to discuss here is that court and legislature still attempting to deal with application of these rule based on computers and or other digital mediums. So there is not still enough work has been done on this evidence. So evidence can be in the case of authentication. Now we will discuss about the authentication. Authentication is a precondition in the code about the document. Authentication of document can be determined by two ways. First is the origin of the document, and the second one is the accuracy of storage. Some self-authentication documents, which includes official publication, newspaper, etc., they don't need authentication. These are self-authenticate documents. So authentication couldn't be. Now moving to next slide, which is the legal issues in e-commerce. There are 6 legal issues in e-commerce, which are notice, consumer issue, personal jurisdiction, intellectual property, dealing with legal uncertainties, legislation and regulation. Now I will discuss all of them step by step. Now moving ahead to the next slide, which is a legal issue, and the first legal issue is the legal notice. The delivery of that notice must be on time. Traditional legal notice was sent through emails and waits for the return receipt and confirmed delivery. When notice sent electronically, it must verify its authenticity and acknowledgement receipt must be determined. When notice originator doesn't receive receipt, he should arrange alternative mode of communication like courier services. Now, the second issue of the e-commerce. E-commerce is growing day by day, so consumer protection is more important, and it also heightens the potential of such problems like fraud and unfair trade. There hasn't been a major effort to reduce consumer risk yet, so there is a need to do a lot of in this regard. Now moving ahead to my third legal issue of the e-commerce. When a breaching party wants to file a case in court, US court requires that a defendant must have a level of minimum contacts to justify his being summoned there. While in e-commerce, message for any transaction may pass through hundreds of jurisdictions across the world without the consent of the parties, which creates a lot of uncertainties. So there is a need to do a lot of work there. The fourth legal issue of the e-commerce is intellectual property. E-commerce demands the non-violation of copyrights, trademarks or intellectual property. Legal activity in trademark area is being done with respect to use of internet domain name. Internet International Ad Hoc Committee constitute to reform current domain naming system. The fifth legal issue of the e-commerce is dealing with legal uncertainties. In e-commerce, many legal principles are there which remains unresolved by formal legal system. As e-commerce is on global scale, so uncertainty is also would be on huge scale. So it is essential to remove uncertainty to fully capitalize on its technological efficiency. The sixth legal issue of the e-commerce is legislation and regulation. Nowadays, legislature, regulatory agencies, domestic and international legal organizations deeply focus on e-commerce laws. But unfortunately, most of their effort remain in the proposal or draft stage. Move to our next topic, which is the legislation. The first legislation is Electronic Fund Transfer Act. It is also called EFTA. It governs the transfer of funds to consumer accounts within rules. It provides protection and locate liability among electronic commerce participants, including financial institution and holder of physical token like ATM. It also allocates risk for various mishaps and establishes a dispute resolution scheme. Beside all of them, it also provides consumer the right of documented information on each transfer and periodic statements also. The second legislation is digital signature legislation. Effective measure can't be assured unless electronic signature provides similar level of assurance regarding authentication, security, etc. Now, digital signature has legal validity as if it had been. Now, moving ahead to my next topic, which is the types of agreements. There are four types of agreements, which are trading partner agreements, value-added network agreement, interconnection agreements, and the payment agreements. And we will discuss all of them. The first agreement which I will discuss is trading partner agreement, which is also called TPA. It is an agreement between parties who wish to trade electronically. Traditionally, it was being done through EDI, but now it also uses the e-commerce technology like internet. TPA can enhance enforceability, reduce misunderstanding, define confidentiality and security. TPA involves system operations, signature, writing requirements, receipt, acceptance, recitals, confidentiality. Now the second type of agreement is value added network agreement, which is also called WAN agreement. It is an agreement between value added communication service provider and the party desiring for data communication, typically for EDI. It includes the technical information regarding the use of message and also contains detail about each party's responsibility for information security. Value-added network involves consumer services, data retention, availability, termination of services, unauthorized access. The third type of agreement is interconnection agreement. To facilitate reliable communication, many value-added network interconnect their system. Value-added networks execute these agreements with each other to state that how their interconnection will operate and to protect themselves from liability. It needed some technical protocols, and these protocols vary in capacity to communicate, acknowledgement and transmit billing information. It also involves message transfer responsibilities, acknowledgement, error resolution, level of services. The fourth type of agreement is payment agreements. In payment agreements, first we will discuss is the financial EDI. It is the responsibility of parties for making credit or debit based trade system electronically. Now, EFT agreements. These are the agreements which are between financial institution and customer. And the third one is credit card and internet payment agreement. This is the agreement between financial institution and card holder or a. To conclude my presentation, we can say that a combination of certain tools, including agreements, legal and business practices, security technologies, along with support and for refinement of these tools through legal reforms, is essential to the success of electronic commerce. This is all from my side. I hope you learned a lot from this material. If anyone of you has query, he may contact me on my email, which is umar_mughal@yahoo.com. I repeated my email, umar_mughal@yahoo.com. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you. Allah Hafiz.